Hi, my name's Darcy Clarke. I'm about to be interviewed by Bobby Fazio. He won the next 3 races, is my understanding, and that's when NASCAR brought in the rule.
All right, now we're on to Darcy Clarke's Stock Eliminator 1964 Plymouth Fury. So in Super Stock, he's got a Plymouth Savoy, and here he's got a 64 Plymouth Fury, and Darcy's going to tell us a little bit of the differences between the two. So Darcy, Savoys were post cars, right?
That's correct.
The Fury
is a hard top. Yes.
All right, what else? Teach us. Go ahead.
This one is a steel nose front end car, unlike the aluminum car. So it's not as lightweight from the factory. And this one I run the low compression combination, which is 11-to-1 compression of the factory. The Super Stocker, I run the high compression, which was 12.5. So the difference factory rating was 10 horsepower. This one's factory rated at 415. NHRA rating is now 403, and the other one, if I ran the high compression in Stock Eliminator, its factory rating is 4.25, but the NHRA rating is 421.
Wow. Okay.
So a huge penalty, and there's not a lot of difference that you can really make in power. You can make some, but not a bunch.
Now, Darcy, how did they make up the difference in the compression between the two combos?
On these engines, high compression, low compression is identical with the exception of the pistons. Cam lift, everything else, heads, intake, carburetors, everything else is the same.
All right, so the high compression has a dome piston?
Yes.
And the low compression has...
The low compression has a smaller dome. The high compression has a bigger dome.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And what kind of pistons are you running in this car?
I run CP pistons actually in all of my race cars. So I actually have 3 race cars, and every one I use CP pistons.
Excellent. All right. And now in Super Stock, you're allowed to, both Stock and Super Stock, you have to keep the same configuration of the piston, right? So you have to have the same dome specs.
Exactly.
You can gas port the piston. You can do certain things to make the piston perform a little bit.
That's right,
better.
and lighter weights and stuff like that. But it still has to squish the same compression ratio. So same dome CCs has to be the same. So in Stock Eliminator, obviously, we're not allowed to do any modifications to the piston. It has to be an approved piston, which CP is very good at making for Stock Eliminator and Super Stocks.
Oh, now this manifold here, now in Stock, you have to run the factory manifold. I mean, parts like this get very difficult to find, I would think, right?
And especially difficult to find that haven't been touched in some way, shape, or form in the past. I mean, these are now, 58 years old, so it's a long time ago that they were made. And they had three different stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 Max Wedges, which basically were the years. And 64 was the final year. That was it. No more Max Wedges.
Okay, and then they went to the Hemi.
And then they went to the Hemi.
Now, what kind of carburetors are they in the Carters?
These are Carters on this one, and for whatever reason, it seems to like them better. So I won't argue.
And now the headers. Are you making your own headers?
No, that's one of the few things that I don't. Both cars, Mark from Performance Welding has done it, and Mark is one of the best header fabricators that you'll ever find.
Performance Welding, West Coast?
Yes,
guy?
yeah, California.
Okay,
yeah.
Yep, he made the collectors that are on my Super Stock car.
Absolutely, he does beautiful headers, beautiful collectors.
Now let's take a look inside this car.
Yep.
Now I'll try not to hit the trailer with the door.
I'll get it for you.
Now this car has, this is the regular car. This is not the lightweight, so the door hinges are.
Hinges.
Right.
No.
Let's check out the miles on this car. 15,260.
I'm pretty sure it was wrapped around.
And what kind of transmission in this car?
This is another ProTrans 727 with typical ProTrans goodies in it.
And torque converters, we forgot to ask both cars, so let's start with this car. What kind of converter?
Both cars, I use ATI converters, and as luck would have it, with these 2 cars, I actually run the same converter in both, and it's very interchangeable. So, so I did a lot of things on these 2 cars to make it more cost effective for me. The rocker gear on my Super Stocker is the same as what's on my Stocker. In fact, the same ratio. They're ratioed 1.5 Harlan Sharps. I can just pull them off and rip replace them.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always good to do that and
Yeah.
be more efficient with the race operation.
Yes.
So the converters are 8-inch converters?
They're 8-inch ATIs. Yes. Yeah.
Now this car, what would this car stall up to?
You know, in this good air, it'll stall a little over 6.
Okay, and then what are you launching at? What are you shifting at?
I launched this one at about 3,100 right now, off the two-step, and I shift about 6,800. Or you try to shift at about 6,800, but sometimes it goes a little longer.
Right. And then what do you go through the traps?
Here I'm going through the traps at about 72, 7,300. Yeah.
Okay, so 1.5 rocker ratio.
1.5 rocker ratio. You
And
betcha.
then the lift in one of these.
Factory lift is 520.
Right, so that's pretty tall.
Pretty
So
tall
you're-
lift for the year.
You're
Yeah.
grinding a pretty stout cam with the short rocker arm.
Yeah, the factory, they did a real stout cam, quite honestly, from the factory, and I literally used less duration than what the factory one was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's very
it's-
odd in stock eliminator. It's usually the other way around.
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
Now, from the factory, did they run a 1.5 rocker arm? And do
Yes,
you
they
have
did.
to run the same ratio that
You
they
have
did?
to run the same ratios offered in factory, just like, carburetors or any other interchangeable parts, yes.
Okay. Cool. And what kind of rear is in one of these cars? in
This
stock
one being a
eliminator?
stock eliminator, I have a Dana 60 in it because you're allowed a corporate rear end.
Sure.
So these cars, you're so heavy, it's more worthwhile to have something that's going to live. This one originally had an 8 3/4, and it was destroying rear ends left and right.
So from the factory, they were making these with 8
8
3/4.
3/4. Yeah.
Now, were they doing the same with these cars
Yes,
here?
yes, they were. Yeah, yeah. In that year, they hadn't gone to a Dana at that time yet.
Okay. What year did they switch to the Danas?
I don't know for 100%, but I would think 65, 66 is when they first started, when the Hemi cars started coming out, right?
Right. So we have a weight box here.
Yes.
We have our Weldon fuel pump.
Yeah.
And then we have the battery over here.
Yeah.
Now these cars don't have batteries up in the front end, right?
Factory or rear battery location. So that's, if you run 2 batteries, you don't need to put one in the front.
Okay, so any car that did not come with a battery up in the front end does not have to run a battery up in the front end. Stock eliminator, if your car came with a battery up there, you have to run it there in the stock
That's
location
correct.
with an alternator.
With a working alternator.
Right.
Yeah.
Does this car have a working alternator?
Yes, it does so. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a very cool car. How did you acquire these cars?
So this car, I actually bought it from, we became exceptionally good friends, Greg Luniak. And Greg had his car. I bought it from him, and I was just down visiting him, and we were talking about what year, and it was 2008 I bought it from him. And it's been a race car for a long, long time.
And then the super stock car.
The super
How
stock
long?
car, I've had it for about 9 years now, 10 years. And when I bought it, this car's only had 5 different owners, and it actually returned back to the original owner. He had passed away, and I bought it from his daughter and son-in-law. And when I bought it, it looked like a garbage can. It was all torn apart, no drivetrain in it. Rake full of empty beer cans and cigarette packets.
Oh.
They didn't know, they knew what they had, but they didn't respect what they had.
Right. No, so you had to get it painted, and who
Yes.
did that?
There was a gentleman in Alberta that did it, and I did, when it went there, this is a super clean body, just because it had always been a race car. It had some really cool past owners. Ted Flack and Howard Comstock campaigned this car as the Plum Crazy car, and then it went to a gentleman named Dr. David Rockwell. He was the gentleman that wrote the book when we were the Ram Chargers. He was a Ram Charger engineer.
Oh, okay.
So
Let's get back to this car now.
Sure.
This is a car that caused some controversy in NASCAR.
yes, it did. In 1966, when Richard Petty was given his new 66 Plymouth to run, he wasn't very successful at the start, and so he drug out his 64 Fury because of the aerodynamics of them. And people don't understand that they have this brake in the top that makes them a very aero car. And if you look at the front end of these cars, of these 64s, they actually are quite a wedge to go through the air. He won the next 3 races, is my understanding, and car brought in the rule that you had to use a current year production car in order to race.
Amazing. All right. So yeah, you can see it. You can see how the
brake in
yeah,
the
it slopes
line.
down.
Yeah, comparative to the post car.
Post car does not have that. It's a flat roof. All right, Darcy. Well, thanks for joining us here. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Good luck in qualifying session number 2 of stock and super stock.
Thank you.
And we hope you land on a good spot in the ladder.
Me too. Thank you very much, Bobby.